The big news for small trucks in America has to be the 2022 Nissan Frontier. This is almost completely redesigned. The only thing that this shares with the outgoing Frontier is some of the frame underneath the skin, but pretty much everything else about the Frontier is new. New engine, new transmission, new interior, and a completely new exterior. Some folks have questioned, why does the frame stay the same as the previous generation Frontier? Well, quite simply, it didn't need to change. When you take a look at the competition, most of their frames generation over generation have incredibly little change, and there's no real practical reason why you can't bolt entirely new parts to the existing frame as long as there was nothing wrong with it in the first place. Before we get too much further, you should know that there are a number of specifications that we don't have just yet on the new 2022 Frontier, and one of the most important of those is the price tag. We don't know exactly how much this is going to cost. It will go on sale later in 2021, we're told right around the fall, so sometime after the Nissan Pathfinder goes on sale, we will probably know pricing and all the specifics that you might be interested in when it comes to the new 2022 Frontier. But there are a lot of things that we do know, so let's talk about that right now. We get full LED headlights. These are really attractive modules, and they're very similar to what we see in other Nissan products, and then a much bigger and bolder grille. Some have complained that some of the compact trucks in America don't look quite butch enough, I guess you'd say. That's certainly not a problem for the Frontier. The model that I've been able to take a look at today is the Pro 4X version. This is the off-road focused Frontier. If you'd like the style of the 4X with the efficiency of a two-wheel drive model, there will be a Pro X version for you. At the bottom of the bumper, we have a radar sensor because this is one of the few mid-sized trucks in America with radar adaptive cruise control, LED fog lights over there on either side, and because this is the off-road focused version, we have recovery hooks, painted orange of course, to match the orange accents in the Nissan grille. As before, there are going to be two different bed lengths and two different cabs available in the Frontier. The King cab is available only with the longer bed, whereas the larger cab is available with both the 5-foot or the 6-foot bed. That brings the total length to 210.2 inches or 224.1 inches long. One of the interesting things about mid-sized trucks in America is that they're not actually shorter on the outside than some half-ton trucks. So if you take a look at a Silverado or Nissan's own Titan, there are going to be versions of those vehicles that may actually be about the same size as this in terms of length. The big difference comes in width. This is going to be narrower, so it's going to be easier to park and a little bit more agile on some of those off-road trails. Moving around to the back, we have LED tail lamp modules, including the turn signal and brake light that we see over there blinking. It's a nice touch because not all small trucks in America have LED tail lamps. We have a backup camera right back there, right next to this tailgate release. As you can see, the tailgate is damp, so it opens really nicely. It's also pretty light and easy to close. Depending on the trim you get, a spray-in bed liner is available, and we have a 400-watt AC inverter built into the vehicle with one plug back here and a plug on the inside. Rather unfortunately, I'm not allowed to look under the hood, but Nissan tells me that an engine truly exists under here. Assuming that it does, it's a 3.8-liter naturally aspirated V6 producing 310 horsepower and 281 pound-feet of torque. This wins the award for horsepower, but not for torque in the mid-sized truck segment. It has a 9-speed automatic transmission, which is interestingly the only 9-speed automatic in this segment. You will find a 10-speed auto in the Ranger, but most of the competition will have either 6 or 8 speeds. Unfortunately, there are no fuel economy numbers just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if the fuel economy numbers were basically the same as the 2021 Frontier because the engine and transmission existed for 1 year only in the previous generation model. So we did get a little bit of a taste about what this combination would be like. There's an optional 2-speed transfer case just as you'd expect in a pickup truck, but you will find maximum payload and maximum towing in the two-wheel drive model. Speaking of payload, that will top out at 1,610 pounds if you get the SV trim with two-wheel drive. Towing will top out in S and SV in the two-wheel drive model at 6,720 pounds. As we see with any small pickup truck, or really any pickup truck in America, your towing and your payload numbers will depend on the options you select and whether you choose two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. Hopping into the front seat, one of the first things you'll notice is that the seating position is a little bit more upright than we find in the Tacoma, and I find that a little bit more comfortable. We have a power driver's seat with a seat bottom cushion that does not adjust for tilt. It simply adjusts for height. We also don't have a telescopic steering column, an interesting omission here. It just adjusts for tilt. At least for now, the front passenger seat remains a manual design. It adjusts fore and aft, and of course reclines. Without detailed specifications, it's a little bit difficult to talk about comparisons, but the rear seat seems to be just about as comfortable as any of the other small trucks in America. This passenger seat is all the way back in its tracks. I have about an inch of legroom left. With the driver's seat comfortably adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, I have about 3 inches left. So this is certainly the kind of truck you could very easily carry 4 adults in. We also have a very square cab with a slight bump up right back here for improved rear passenger headroom. If I put my head all the way back here towards the headrest, I have about an inch of headroom left. Under the rear seats, we find some additional storage space, and the rear seats also fold flat if you find that more convenient. If you get the optional Fender audio system, the subwoofer is tucked away right here under this side of the rear seats. Now let's take a quick look around the interior. We do have a pretty standard sized moonroof right here over the driver and front passenger in this vehicle. At this point, not all of the details for what we'll find in each trim seem to be set in stone, so definitely keep that in mind. This is the Pro 4X version, so you can definitely see we have some additional style going on these leather seats. Also Pro 4X stamped right there into the seat back. One thing I noticed right away is the level of detail in here that I hadn't expected, like this sort of crosshatch or basket weavy kind of pattern. I guess you could also call that perhaps carbon fiber pattern, embossed into the leather on the seat backs. We also find more premium materials on the front doors than we found in the previous generation of the Frontier, although admittedly the previous generation Frontier was pretty old, so that's not too surprising. This one has the optional Fender audio system, so there are going to be a few little details in here that we don't find in models without it. It's a big bottle holder right down there at the bottom of the door. And then an interesting styling touch is we get a little insert of hard plastic right there with that same sort of crosshatch pattern that we find on the seats. On the passenger side, we find a soft touch injection molded airbag cover, 2 large air vents right there. There's a decently sized bin-style glove compartment. I'm not entirely sure whether I'd be able to fit a large tablet computer inside. Dominating the dashboard is a 9-inch color touchscreen LCD. One of the interesting things in here is that this is actually quite large for a pickup truck in America, period, not just a mid-size truck. There are actually a lot of full-size trucks that don't have an LCD quite this large. You can see this is running Nissan's latest infotainment software, so it's pretty snappy. As you'd expect, we have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support, large knobs for the volume and tuning, some physical buttons right there. Below that, we have the controls for the dual-zone automatic climate control system, which should be pretty familiar if you've seen a Nissan product before. Controls for the 4-wheel drive system over here, and keyless start. Below that, we have the heated seat controls, heated steering wheel controls, USB inputs, large storage area right there, 2 very large cup holders. The shifter is a pretty typical console shifter. There is a manual mode over here on the left side. That's a nice touch. A lot of vehicles have charge pads that are just a little too small for modern smartphones. This doesn't appear to be one of them. We have a center console right there with an armrest and a small storage area, just as you'd expect in a small truck. In a surprising touch, Nissan borrowed the steering wheel out of the Nissan Titan truck rather than the newer steering wheel design that we find in the Rogue and the Pathfinder. On this side, we find controls for that multifunction LCD instrument cluster. This also doubles as track forward-backward. We have volume up, down, some voice command buttons over there, and then the controls for the adaptive cruise control system on this side. The instrument cluster itself features 2 large physical dials and then a 7-inch LCD in the middle. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how much the Frontier costs at the moment because I don't know, and it doesn't seem like anybody at Nissan America is allowed to know just yet, but hopefully we will all know closer to when it goes on sale, fall of 2021. But I can say that Nissan has come an awful long way since this 1990 hard-body pickup truck. This generation was released in the late 80s, and it was the first product designed in Nissan's design center down here in Southern California, and the Frontier is the latest product designed by this design center. Also, the new Pathfinder has been designed by the same group of people. Clearly, you can see that there are pretty much no styling cues shared between this hard body and the latest Frontier, but I suspect that the new Frontier model is definitely going to make a splash of its very own. Although payload and towing figures are not class-leading for the Frontier, you may find that towing a 6,000 to 6,500 pound trailer is going to be a little bit better in the Frontier than in some of the competition, because we do have 310 horsepower and that 9-speed automatic transmission, which definitely puts this in a slightly different category than its direct competitor from Toyota, of course, the Tacoma. And it's safe to say that the seating position is going to be significantly more comfortable than the Tacoma. My big complaint about one of the best-selling trucks in America right now, that small Toyota, is the driver's seat position. It's really not very ergonomic, especially for someone that's my height. It really sort of feels like you're just hanging out on the ground driving the truck. It's very, very uncomfortable, and with this vehicle, you're sitting a little bit more upright, more like a traditional truck. If you haven't already done so, be sure and hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. I'll be updating you on all of the Frontier news just as soon as I can get it, including pricing, and of course how it drives once I can get my hands behind the wheel. But in the meantime, I can safely say that if you're considering a small pickup truck purchase in America in 2021, it's worth your while to wait until the Frontier is on sale, at least so you can test and see how it compares to the competition. In the meantime, be sure and find us over at facebook.com/AlexNautos, and if you want to find all of your latest AOA merch, head over to AOAmerch.com. I'll see all of you later.